Nightly it came and killed 30 of my finest thanes. The great hall of Herod, which I built for celebration, was instead turned into a mourning hall. Nobly, I regret doing it. But I had no choice. I had to call in a prince who was like a nephew to me. One with a legacy of ridding places of monsters. I had to send word to him, the head of the gates, Beowulf. Surely those were the words that ran through the mind of King Hrothgar, as the monstrous Grendel wreaked havoc upon all of his hall, tearing this glorious mead hall Herod down to its roots and staining its floors with the blood of his finest men. You see, Grendel was a monster, a descendant of Cain, a physical giant of epic proportions, its skin slick with coarse hair, and no man's weapon could dare harm it. Not that their armor could defend against it either. It would tear them limb from limb, breaking bone and draining blood with no effort whatsoever. It was a monster among monsters that the king of the Danes had no hope of defeating. Not with his men, and not on his own. The only saving grace for him was the consecrated throne at which he sat upon, and from which he had to ask a favor. That favor was across the sea. A noble warrior with a legacy of monster hunting. Someone that he deemed as a nephew, having known him growing up. The man, Beowulf. You see, Beowulf was the prince, and the head of the gates, which was a group of warriors, fine warriors, of epic build and stature that had a legacy of defeating monsters. Not everyone in the court was convinced, of course. How could they be? This man, supposedly from across the sea, coming to fight Grendel, when he could not even win a race against a man. Mind you, that man was Brecca, and Beowulf was hindered, to say the least. But not one, not two, not three, but 9 sea monsters that he had to best along the way. And I assure you, Beowulf would not allow that to happen again. So upon meeting with Hrothgar, he spoke with him and learned of the beast Grendel. And while the king was panicked and afraid of holding any celebrations in the Herod, he needed that. He heard the stories of how no mortal weapon could dare harm Grendel. So, he decided, after a night of partying, to draw the monster in. He would wrestle it and best it with his own hands. And thusly, the events unfolded. Many drinks were spilled, stories exchanged, typical of the king of the Danes and all of the stories that were told among them. Then night fell. And Grendel, as the noise died down, lumbered his way to the hall. Surely, he had to be thinking, "This again. I'll tear them limb from limb. They will no longer disturb me." And he once more stormed to the doors of the Herod and blew them open with his mighty strength. As he marched through the sleeping men, one stirred, a naked man, one that he had never seen before. And quickly arose in the Herod great fervor, as blows were exchanged and tables overthrown, clatters and clangs, but not of armor, but bone and flesh, meeting one another in vicious combat. Then it happened. Grendel The unbeatable monster struck at this man he had never seen before. The man grabbed him, around the wrist, around the shoulder, and he pulled and pulled and pulled until, pop, the creature's arm was pulled from his body, and already wounded from this battle that raged across the entire Herod, splintering its boards and cracking its ground. He had no choice but to turn tail and run. And run he did, back through the wilds from which he came, among the bog, his feet sinking into the mud as blood spilled from his wound, and he found his home, that cave in the midst of the wilds. And life left him. It was unfathomable, unbelievable to those in the great hall, and even to the Yates themselves, as Beowulf hung the arm from the rafters in their battered and bruised state, and claimed victory over the bestial Grendel. His disbeliever, Unferth, looked at him in awe. Who was this man that could unfall such a beast, make a creature that made the mightiest of Hrothgar's warriors quiver look like nothing? This man was Beowulf. His story was not quite over yet, but I believe I've had your ears for long enough. We will continue this at another time. Until then, stay safe, my friends, as this old bard calls it tonight. Thank you.